Today I'm meeting with Al Schwartz. He is a producer and director, and he has produced many of our favorite shows, such as the Golden Globes, the Daytime Emmys, the Academy of Country Music Awards, and the American Music Awards. He also served as Senior Vice President of Dick Clark Productions for many years. Let's hear what he has to say about the wise bamboo. Please welcome Al Schwartz. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Sophia.
What was the initial desire you had to become a television producer?
Oh, that's really hard to say, Sophia. A producer kind of becomes a producer. I don't think you ever really start out to be a producer. The best way today to become a producer is usually by being a writer. For some reason, writers have that seem to have the pathway to becoming a producer. I did it through directing. My initial job in television was as a television director, and but before that I was a stage manager that led me to becoming a director. And then as a director, there's kind of a fine line between a director and a producer. And I shouldn't say all producers direct, but all directors kind of produce in a way, because they try to put their own creative input into anything that's being developed.
And how do you overcome the challenges that you're faced with in your career?
Well, you know, I think I overcome my challenges by remembering an old saying that I heard when I was in the service in Japan. I learned through the Japanese society that their saying is, "A wise bamboo bends." The meaning for that lies in the fact that the sturdy oak tree that holds its ground and won't bend when it's facing a typhoon or a hurricane or whatever will be rigid and then be blown over. The wise bamboo sways with the breeze, and therefore it survives. And I think that in producing or directing or almost in any part of the creative arts, compromise is really the chief source.
And can you tell me about a time where you felt insecure or unsure about yourself and how you overcame that fear?
Wow. Well, you know, insecurity usually is when you can't get your way. And sometimes a situation develops that calls for you to just say, okay, I can't do anything about it, so I'll just accept it. A case in point that at least comes to mind right now was when I was much younger and a stage manager. I was working on the first great debate at CBS. It was the first presidential debate between President Kennedy and then Richard Nixon. And I was in the makeup room, and they had just finished making up Kennedy. And the makeup man said, "Okay, we're through with Kennedy. Al, would you go get Mr. Nixon?" And so I walked back to the holding area where Mr. Nixon was, and I walked into the door, and everything got silence as I came into the room, and I said, "Mr. Nixon, we are ready for you now in makeup." It was kind of a pause. And then Nixon looked at me and he said, "Well, I don't wear makeup." And all the other people in the room said, yeah, Mr. Nixon doesn't wear makeup. So I said, "Are you sure?" And they said, "Yeah, absolutely." So I went back and told Sid Simon, the makeup artist on the show, that Nixon had decided not to wear any makeup. I think it was one of the big criticisms of the Great Debate was that Richard Nixon was sweaty and very swarthy, and as a result they think that's probably why he lost the debate. I was terrified. I was terrified because I couldn't get him to come in and do makeup, and to this day I think, you know what, I was kind of a little bit on the edge of history, because maybe if Richard Nixon had taken makeup that day, maybe the outcome of the debate would have been different.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to start something new in their life, but they feel overwhelmed and they're not really sure where to begin?
I think if somebody is looking to start something new in their life, that they have to accept the challenge as something that's good, that it's interesting, that it's going to be exciting, and that you don't have to know the outcome in advance. You know, we're so afraid that we're not going to accomplish the goal that we set out to do. But sometimes the goal that's the result is much better than anything that we've ever thought about. So I say accept the challenge, you know, embrace it. I think that it's exciting to be involved in something that you're not really sure how it's going to end up. You may have some influence and maybe not. Maybe other outside sources are going to have the real influence, and you have to accept it. But just being a part of it is what's exciting and interesting. And that's why I say embrace the challenge.
And knowing what you know now, would you do things differently?
That's a very funny question, because people always ask, you know, if you had a chance to change anything in your life, would you do it? The first feeling is, yeah, of course, I would try to make things come out a different way. But if you do that, then you have to accept the fact that the way things resulted in your real life would not happen, because life is a series of chain reactions. One thing influences another thing. So if you go back to change something, it means you're not just changing that one little element, you're changing the whole process. And maybe you don't want to change the whole process. So it's like, you know, if somebody says if you had a chance to be born all over again, what changes would you make? Well, it's impossible, because that not only means changing your life, but it means changing the lives of everybody that you were in contact with as you grew up, and all of those things. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever change a thing.
And what part of your career gives you the most satisfaction?
I think the most satisfaction that occurs in producing or directing or being creative in the television world or the entertainment world is interaction with people. People are just incredible. You know, on shows like the American Music Awards, some artists would be terribly difficult, and you would shudder just the fact that you had to ask them to do something for you. And others are just so great that you walk away and say, wow, that's the nicest person I ever met. And I think that's part of it. I think the biggest part of enjoyment is interaction with people, and what evolves when you have a relationship with somebody. It always turns out for the best. That's what I feel. I'm an eternal optimist, and I kind of like to keep it that way, I guess. And of course, having a chance to talk to people like you.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you so much,
Good.
Sophia.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, good luck to you.
Thank you very much.